Yo, what's up guys? It's King Sean here, back with another video, and in today's video, I'll be bringing you guys my 2024 Washington Commanders training camp preview. I'll be talking about the 4 things you guys should keep your eye on the most and some other information as well. So, if you guys are new to my channel, leave a like down below, subscribe, turn on notifications. I'm on the road to 4K subs. If you could, hit that sub button. I'd really appreciate it. And with that out of the way, let's get straight into the video. Alright, so the training camp is just on the horizon. Veterans report in 2 days, Tuesday, July 23rd, and then our first practice is the day afterwards, Wednesday, July 24th. Super excited. I will be at one of the training camp practices, so that'll be a fun time, cool experience. We'll make sure I get my own clips from there as well. Maybe take a picture with a player or two. We'll see. But I make these annual, training camp previews because I just want to give you guys an idea of what to look for during training camp, starting with the wide receiver battle, the battle for, you could say, the 4th, 5th, and 6th receiver spots, because I made a video on our wide receiver core about a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago, but I said that Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Luke McCaffrey are the only locks, you could say, right? The other guys, Yami Brown, Olumide Zaccheaus, Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint, Jamison Crowder, those guys, in my opinion, are not locks just yet. I know De'Ami Brown, he's a guy that always has a good minicamp, OTA, training camp, preseason. But, when it comes to the regular season, when it's the real deal, he just fails to, impress, fails to contribute to the offense. He just doesn't show out in the regular season, which is unfortunate. And we know De'Ami Brown, he was a 3rd-round pick. I know a lot of fans had high expectations for him coming into this first season because he was going to be with Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin, obviously wide receiver 1, and then Curtis Samuel, we signed him in free agency. He was going to be used as our gadget guy, slot wide receiver 3. So we had high expectations for De'Ami, but he just hasn't panned out. So we'll see if he does better with Cliff Kingsbury as his offensive coordinator and Jayden Daniels as his quarterback. But we shall see. Olumide Zaccheaus, we signed him this offseason to a 1-year deal. He was forming with the Eagles. Didn't do much with the Eagles this past season. I think he had like 1 or 2 touchdowns. And then before that, he was with the Falcons. And he was actually playing pretty well with the Falcons. I think this one season he put up like over 700 yards. So he was putting up solid numbers with the Falcons. So he could be a pretty solid wide receiver 4. Maybe even wide receiver 3 if we feel like, Luke McCaffrey just isn't at the point where he can be a wide receiver 3. So if we want to put him there, well, you can, but I feel like he could be a decent wide receiver 4 or wide receiver 5. And then you have Jamison Crowder. We re-signed him to a 1-year deal. He wasn't the best returner last year, but he's a reliable guy. He doesn't really, fumble or muff, although he had like 2 fumbles last year. He doesn't really muff or fumble kicks, so he is a fine returner, I guess, unless a guy like, Kazmir Allen impresses his training camp or preseason. Maybe he makes the roster over Jamison Crowder. We shall see. Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint, he had that one-handed catch in rookie minicamp, and since then we just haven't heard much of him. I think he got injured at one point during off-season minicamp OTAs. I want to say, I'm not 100% sure, but I heard it from some reporter. But hopefully he impresses. I really want him to make the roster. I feel like that's a guy who could make the roster because of that one-handed catch. That was super impressive, and he actually looked pretty solid at Georgia. He's not the fastest guy, but he is a big guy. He's pretty tall. I want to say he's like 6'2", 6'3", maybe even 6'4". So if he makes the roster, he would provide more height to this wide receiver core, which we absolutely need, because our tallest wide receiver right now, I want to say, is like Luke McCaffrey, who's 6'2", or Bryson Tremaine, who is, I want to say, 6'2" as well. Other guys, we have Dax Milne, probably not going to make the roster. Mitchell Tinsley could make the roster, made it last year, but he might not make it this year, but we shall see. Damiere Byrd, we signed him this offseason as well. I already mentioned Bryson Tremaine and Kazmir Allen. And Davion Davis, he was one of the standouts in minicamp and OTAs. He was actually looking pretty good, but I doubt he makes the roster. Maybe he makes some noise this training camp or preseason, but I doubt he makes the roster. But he is a practice squad candidate, so we shall see. But definitely keep an eye out on the wide receivers. The guys, we'll see. Let's see who makes the team, because we already know, like I said, Terry, Jahan, Luke McCaffrey, they are locks. But let's see who takes the remaining 3 spots. Now let's talk about the guy who's going to be throwing passes. Jayden Daniels, our rookie quarterback out of LSU, obviously. JD, he was impressing during minicamp and OTAs. He's been nonstop grinding this offseason on multiple videos, multiple flicks of him, working out. Even with some of the guys like De'Ami Brown, I want to say Brian Robinson Jr. as well, Marcus Mariota, Austin Eckler, Olamide Zaccheaus. The list goes on and on. So he's working with some of the guys and other NFL players as well as offseason. I know he worked out with Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and some other guys as well. So with Jayden Daniels, the grind never stops. He never stops putting in that work, which, a lot of people around the league, a lot of reporters, a lot of analysts, a lot of people in the Commanders building are adamant about. They speak highly of Jayden Daniels. A lot of guys around the NFL do. And, gaining that level of respect, that recognition as a rookie, as a 23-year-old rookie, is super impressive. So super excited to see what Jayden Daniels does this training camp. He was showing out a bit in mini camp and OTAs. I want to say he had a deep bomb to Jahan Dotson in mini camp or OTAs. But yeah, he was playing pretty nice in mini camp and OTAs. But that was mini camp and OTAs. Training camp is real deal when we get to open up the playbook a lot more when the pads come on. So we'll see if you can survive behind the offensive line, which I'll get to later in the video. Yeah, super excited to see what Jayden Daniels does. Don't have a lot to talk about him because we'll see what he does. I have a lot of faith in Jayden Daniels. Hopefully he'll get a good amount of reps in preseason, not a whole lot, but a good amount. And obviously, we'll see what he does this training camp. We have 2 joint practices, one against the Jets. I think the first one's against the Jets, the second one's against the Dolphins. So we'll see what he does against those pretty solid defenses. Well, the Jets defense is good. The Dolphins defense, they lost a lot of pass rushers. They lost Christian Wilkins this free agency. I know Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips got placed on the PUP list. And they drafted Chop Robinson. So they don't got a lot of edge rushers, don't got a lot of pass rushers, so we'll see what happens with them. But back on Jayden Daniels, I'm just overall super excited to see what he does this training camp. Now it is time to talk about the guys that will be protecting Jayden Daniels, the offensive line. And the offensive line, that's kind of been a hot topic this offseason. We don't have the best offensive line in the NFL. Last year, our offensive line was arguably the worst offensive line in the NFL, probably behind the Giants because their O-line allowed like 85 sacks last year, which is insane. So second to worst O-line in the NFL. The one guy that was keeping our O-line, in my opinion, from being the worst in the NFL was probably Sam Cosmi, who was one of the best guards in the NFL last year. Underrated guard, and the reason why he doesn't get as much recognition as other guys do, in my opinion, is probably because the other guys on our line suck. I mean, Charles Leno Jr., he allowed 9 sacks last year. Andrew Wiley allowed 9 sacks last year. You could say he was better towards, later this season, but just by how much? Not by much. So he was bad. Nick Gates was terrible. Sadiq Charles, he wasn't terrible, I guess, but he wasn't great either. He was bad. Okay, I'm just gonna say he was bad, but he wasn't downright terrible. He had his moments, his good moments, but he just wasn't great. So Sam Cosmi, he was really our only good offensive line, and we did upgrade our interior offensive line this offseason, signing Tyler Biadasz, former Cowboys center, coming from Dallas to reunite with Dan Quinn. Allowed 4 sacks from 2022 to 2023, which is really good. So averaging, allowing on an average about 2 sacks a season, which isn't bad for a center. We also signed Nick Allegretti, who wasn't a starter for the Chiefs, but he hasn't allowed a single snap in about, I want to say, a 300 or some pass blocking snaps, which is really freaking good. He got a 3-year deal this offseason worth about $16.5 million. So he's going to get a chance to start here with us, and hopefully he will be pretty solid. And then as for our tackles, this is where, fans really start to worry. Our tackles. We obviously cut Charles Leno. We did re-sign Cornelius Lucas to about a 2-year, $4 million deal, or I think it was like a 1-year deal, 1-year, 2-year deal. Kind of forgot, but we did re-sign him. I like that. He's a really good swing tackle. And then we brought back Andrew Wiley. Well, he's still on contract for another 2 years, but we decided not to cut him. We decided to keep him as a right tackle. And, Wiley, he just wasn't great at all last year. Like I said, he was better a bit down the stretch of the season, but not by much. So hopefully he will be better with, now us adding Nick Allegretti and Tyler Biadasz, 2 pretty solid interior offensive linemen, as well as already having Sam Cosmi. So hopefully he will improve but we shall see. And then you also have Brandon Coleman, who we drafted. I'm pretty sure he's going to start at left tackle. Cornelius Lucas has a chance to start, and that's a position battle to watch. There, I should have included that as well. I'll include it here for a minute. Cornelius Lucas versus Brandon Coleman for that starting left tackle spot. Who will win it? Right now, I have Brandon Coleman winning it. Drafted him in the third round, pick 65 overall, I'm pretty sure, or pick 66 actually, pick 67 overall it was. My bad. I have high hopes for Brandon Coleman. He looked pretty solid in minicamp and OTAs, but we really won't for sure know what he will be until the pads kind of come on and we can see what he does in preseason and obviously when the regular season comes. So training camp will kind of let us know if Brandon Coleman has what it takes to be a starting caliber left tackle in the NFL. So we shall see there, but I am hoping for the best, and I hope that Brandon Coleman does become our starting left tackle because he has a lot of potential. He has a lot of high upside. He has high upside, but we just got to develop in the right way, and hopefully he will be he will turn into a really good left tackle because if he does, then that would be an absolute steal home run pick for Adam Peters, and that way we don't have to address the left tackle position next year. All right, so now we're switching over to the defensive side of the ball, and we've made some massive upgrades to our defense this offseason. Obviously, the hirings of Dan Quinn, and he brought on Joe Wood Jr., and an excellent defensive coaching staff and offensive coaching staff, but especially defensive coaching staff. I like a lot of the guys he brought in there on that side of the ball. And we brought in some pieces on defense. We brought in Dorrance Armstrong from Dallas, Frankie Lavu, one of the more underrated linebackers in the NFL, Dante Fowler Jr., Cleveland Farrell, Bobby Wagner, Hall of Famer, soon to be Hall of Famer once he retires, obviously. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, no question, no doubt about that. He brought in Jeremy Chin, Michael Davis, and a bunch of other guys as well. Also drafted Jordan McGee, Jerzon Newton, and Dominique Hampton, and other guys as well. Oh, I can't even forget Mikey Sanderstill. I feel like Mikey Sanderstill, he's going to be an excellent nickelback in a couple of years, maybe like a year or two, man. I have high hopes for Mikey Sanderstill. He's going to be one of the best nickelbacks, slot cornerbacks in the NFL just in a few years because he's just a veteran. He was a veteran for the Michigan defense. He has unbelievable football IQ. He's smart. He played on both sides of the ball, wide receiver and obviously cornerback. He's going to be a future star in the NFL, and I already know it. This defense, I have high hopes. Last year, we ranked dead last in yards per game allowed, passing yards per game allowed, points per game allowed. I mean, it was just all around bad. Our defense was all around bad last year. Absolutely terrible. And obviously, our pass defense, like I stated, wasn't great last year, and our cornerbacks were pretty bad. Emmanuel Forbes wasn't great in his rookie season last year. Got beat a bunch against A.J. Brown, DJ Moore, and other guys as well. Benjamin St-Juste, he was pretty inconsistent last year. He had 17 pass deflections last year, which is a really high total. That's pretty good, but he was getting beat here and there, well, actually a lot. So he was pretty inconsistent last year. He had some good games, you could say. The Falcons game, he had an interception, although he got mossed by Drake London and cooked by Kyle Pitts at one time for a touchdown. So he had some bad games, but he also had some, you could say decent games, I guess. So he was pretty inconsistent last year, but Emmanuel Forbes, he just wasn't great at all last year. So he brought in Michael Davis, and Michael Davis, he wasn't great last year. He allowed like 9 touchdowns on single coverage, which is pretty bad. But in 2022 and in 2020, he was pretty good. So if he can just get back to his 2022, 2020 self, then he can be a pretty solid cornerback for us. And obviously, we brought in Jeremy Chin from Carolina. He was really good in his first 2 seasons in the NFL. But I feel like these past 2 seasons, Carolina just wasn't using him right. They were using him mostly in the slot. And he's a guy where you kind of have to use him a bit of everywhere, in the slot, at safety, in, the box, pretty much everywhere. And I feel like, having Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. over here, they are going to use Jeremy Chin to the best of his abilities. They're going to put him in a spot where he's comfortable and he can show his full potential. So, and Jeremy Chin even said on like a podcast, he even said that he got offered more money to go to a place like the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he felt like, coming here, he would have the best chance to succeed here and to, ball out, because we have Dan Quinn, Joe Wood Jr., and other really, really good defensive coaches. So, that's already the impact Dan Quinn has had on this team. Players coming here. I bet if we didn't hire Dan Quinn, Bobby Wagner wouldn't have came here. Dorrance Armstrong wouldn't have came here. Even Frankie Louvu, he wouldn't have came here probably. So, Dan Quinn and, the coaches he brought in impacted the players. We were able to sign this free agency, which is what I really like. And he is going to put these players in, the best positions possible for them to succeed, which is something I absolutely love about Dan Quinn. So I have high hopes for this team. Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne. I feel like our defensive line is going to be way better than last year. Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, they kind of had down years last year, especially Deron Payne. Jonathan Allen, he wasn't as bad as people said were talking about him last year. He wasn't that bad last year. He had like 5.5 sacks, I think 50 plus tackles, a good amount of TFLs, good amount of pressures. Deron Payne, he wasn't great last year at all. He had like 4 sacks. I think he had less pressures than Jonathan Allen, less TFLs than Jonathan Allen. So hopefully he can get back to his 2022 self. Dorrance Armstrong, he was good last year. Dante Fowler, Cleveland Farrell, he was cool last year too. But Jamin Davis, he will get more edge rusher snaps, which I absolutely love. Use him in that Micah Parsons role where he will get some playing time at edge, playing time at off-ball linebacker. That's the reason why I feel like Jamin Davis hasn't been as good. He hasn't lived up to, that 19th overall pick. He hasn't, unlocked his full potential because JDR and Ron Rivera, they were using him the wrong way. I feel like they should have been using him in more of that Micah Parsons role, the way the Dallas Cowboys used Micah Parsons, the way Dan Quinn used Micah Parsons in his defense. So Jamin Davis, with Dan Quinn, Joe Wood Jr. as his coaches, he should have a better year. He should, progress even more. And obviously our DBs, I feel like Benjamin St-Juste will be better. Emmanuel Forbes, he'll be better by how much we shall see, because he was like the worst starting cornerback in the NFL last year, at least in my opinion. So we have some guys, Quan Martin too. I feel like they're going to give him a shot at free safety. I feel like he can be a really good free safety, but we shall see. So we got a lot of, talented guys on this defense, and we have the right coaches to put them in positions for them to succeed. And I feel like this defense, we can only, get better. We can only improve because we were the worst defense last year. So I feel like at the very least, we should be like a top 20 defense. And I feel like, if Dan Quinn is able to, unlock the potential out of all of these guys, we can potentially be a top 10 defense this year, but we shall see. So that is really it for my training camp preview. Comment down below what you guys are most excited to see this training camp and preseason. Like I said in the beginning of my video, training camp starts on Wednesday. The first practice is Wednesday, and then veterans report on Tuesday. We should get Dan Quinn and a couple other players maybe talking on Tuesday and Wednesday, of course, so stay tuned for that. Hope y'all enjoyed today's video. If you did, leave a like down below, subscribe, turn on notifications. I'm on the road to 4K subs. If you could, hit that sub button. I'd really appreciate it. And other than that, it's been King Sean, and I'm out. Peace.